Hi everyone, in today's video is going to be my build for the Diecast Mafia's Caravan Camper or Trailer Challenge. For this build I'm going to be using this Hot Wheels Volvo 240 drift camper. Ever since I picked this one up, I always wanted to make this into a Rusty Bootlegger's build with a trailer, because I was really interested in seeing how the trailers worked within the rulebook of Gaslands. So the first thing I did after drilling out the base was to put the interior piece into a jar of bleach. This would dechrome it. Off camera I'll fish this out with some pliers and wash it so it's safe to handle. Next I wanted to add a turreted gunner to the vehicle. All I had available was this Bad Cops turret gunner from 3D Kingdoms, which I bought off of eBay. Obviously this is meant to be a cop, but I'll try and paint it up to look like a redneck to suit the Rusty Bootlegger's theme. Mark out on the roof where the gun is going to sit. And then I cut a rectangle piece of styrene. This is to fill the gap between the roof of the car and the gunner, as you can see. I then use my hobby knife to drill a pallet hole, followed by using my pin drill to drill the actual hole for the peg system I'm going to use to attach the gunner to the roof. Obviously I drill a hole into the base of the gunner using the same methods. Then cut a piece of styrene rod for the peg, attaching it to the base of the gunner. Next I glue the glass in, because as you can kind of see the small detail moulded into the side glass here. I figured it looked like armoured windows and that was just like a viewport with a sliding door. I then cut some styrene rod to make the rivets. Which I then glue into the corners of the windows to make them look like armoured panels that have been bolted into place over the windows. I make a viewport for the front windshield by cutting some of this C-shaped styrene. I make a few adjustments so this will sit at the right angle, and then I glue it into place. Moving on to the camper. Now originally I intended to have these 3 flamethrowers sticking out the windows, but after looking at the rules, a simplified version of the rules is there's 3 categories of trailer. There's light, medium and heavy, and likewise they can only be pulled from vehicles of those classes. So since this was going to be pulled by a car, it would be a medium trailer. A light trailer can only carry additional ammo, a medium trailer can have 1 weapon slot and carry additional ammo, and then a heavy trailer can carry additional ammo and have 3 weapon slots, so I kind of had to scrap the idea of having the 3 flamethrowers on this. Instead, I opted for a napalm launcher, which was going to be barrels of moonshine, because the Rusty Bootleggers are moonshiners, and I wanted them to have a weapon that was kind of moonshine powered, so it would have had to be some kind of flame weapon. So we went for the napalm launcher. This also gives us some added lore. Instead of just being a race vehicle, this is probably a vehicle they use to sell their moonshine from different settlements, with the option of it being weaponized in case they've been chased down by bandits. Although I'd hate to be the guy who had to explain to his boss that I dumped half my cargo out on the road to avoid marauders. So I start by marking out where I'm going to need to cut a hole for the barrels to be rolled out of the back of the trailer. I then attempt to cut this with my hobby knife, which proves too difficult, so I switch over to my sprue cutters. With the hole now cut, I need to make a delivery chute for the barrels. I start with a scrap piece of sheet styrene, measuring out and marking it. Once I've cut the pieces out and I'm happy with the way they look, I then make a backstop inside the camper. This is just so I don't lose the barrels inside this, because I've only got so many of these barrels, which I make using some C-shaped styrene. I then assemble the pieces together using some masking tape to hold it all together until the glue is kind of set. Off camera I paint the inside of the camper black. This is just so if there's any gaps and such and you look in, you don't see anything. I then reassemble the camper. I also reuse one of the barrels to help make sure I get the barrel delivery chute on straight as I glue it into place. Once one part's perfectly glued in place, I remove the barrel and then glue the other sides. Off camera I add some rivets to the windows of the camper like I did with the car. Next I decided to add these slasher hubcaps to the camper to discourage anyone from ramming the trailer from the side. These are made by Hardkill. Though I don't like how far these spikes stick out because I've used these before on previous models and they're usually the first things to break off or they cause damage to other models, and because they stick out so much it makes the model too wide to stick into a display case to prevent it getting damaged. So I cut them off with my jeweler's saw and then glue them onto the wheels. still want to have some kind of wheel spike on these, I cut some H-shaped styrene and glue them into the little divots on the wheel. This way they still look like they could chew your car up, but they're not going to cause problems with my other models when I go to store this. As you can see, they stick out a lot less, but still look like they could chew your car up if you got a little too close. For a finishing touch, I want to fill in these little holes on the side of the camper. This is just where the two halves of the camper shell clip together. To do this, I plan to use some green stuff, which is a 2-part modelling putty. Simply cut off a chunk and then knead it until you've got a nice solid green colour. Once it's like this, you've got about 6 hours before it'll harden. It's also very sticky at this stage, so be careful where you put this because it will just stick to everything and anything. A lot like super glue. Anyways, I tear off little chunks of this and fill the holes and smooth them off the best I can with my hand. Moving on to the painting, I start with a base colour of Revell Aqua Colour Rust for both the car and the camper. You'll also notice I've got masking tape on the hood of the car because I want to try and save that carbon fibre hood. I follow up with a stippling of Revell Aqua Colour Leather Brown and then a stippling of Revell Aqua Colour Brawn to create a nice rusty effect, which I've done from my previous bootlegger build that I did. And then do the same thing over the windows with some Revell Aqua Colour Steel. At this point I wasn't quite happy with the way the camper looked, so I went over the top half with some Revell Aqua Colour Matte White to bring back the two-tone paint job. Like usual, I skip over painting all the little details just to kind of cut the runtime down, and then I finish with a nice homemade black wash to blend everything together and give it that nice dirty wasteland look. Here we have the final build. This was quite a fun one to build, getting to know all the rules regarding trailers and gaslands. I certainly want to get my hands on some more caravans and trailers for future scenery and builds. You may have noticed that there's an R painted on the doors. This is because going forward I want to try and have some kind of sponsor logo for the sponsored builds to kind of differentiate them from my other builds. Initially I was going to write Rusty Bootleggers on the side, but I'm not too confident in my skills at doing that, and I've tried this a couple of times before and I always hate the end result. So I'm thinking of doing some kind of simplistic versions of logos, and considering the Rusty Bootleggers vehicles are kind of ramshackle to put together, it made sense that they would just freehand paint an R on the door and call it done. Obviously I'll have to go ahead and try and make some different logos for all of the teams, but that'll be something I'll just do on my own time off camera, and hopefully you'll see them in future builds. Please be sure to check out the other builders who took part in this event hosted by the Diecast Mafia. Simply search Diecast Mafia Caravan Camper or Trailer Challenge. As usual, please stick around for the usual glamour shots and my little animation. Hope you've all enjoyed the video, and I'll see you all in the next one.